Let's make this official and officially welcome Tullian and Stacy back to the sanctuary. You were very, very missed, sir.
It is good to be back.
The Oracle is home.
Yeah, the Oracle. God help us all if I'm the Oracle. No, it's great to be back. I was standing in the back for the first two songs and thinking to myself, I've missed this because I need it. You forget. I forget how much I actually need this. So it is good to be back. We missed you guys. We love you guys.
There is something to be said for the in the room experience,
big
right?
time. We're incredibly grateful that what we do here gets broadcasted to places all around the world where people can't, be in the room. But there's no substitute. And anybody who travels here from far away, who has been watching online and loves being able to watch online, says the same thing, that there's just no substitute for actually being in the room.
I met Mark this morning. He traveled. He said from down south. And when you say that to me, I'm like, where are you from? He said, Boynton. I was like, that's not.
Come on. I'm from Fort Lauderdale. That's further south than Boynton.
Eric is his name. I mistook him. So this,
no, it's good to be back.
I'm glad to have
where's
you.
Betty? Is she here? Betty. You are the godmother of this place. Thank you. Thank you. That was incredibly sweet. Thank you. We love you. We missed you. Betty gets anything and everything she wants.
Noted.
Around here. That is, if I am an oracle at all, that's
awesome.
it.
But personally, I'm so glad you're back. I've been bugging you while you're gone.
It's okay.
And all that changes on Wednesday. We're going. So this is classic table talk opportunity.
Before you say anything
now
else,
we're talking.
Hold on. I haven't talked for a month, so give me a break, okay?
Go.
We're going to be here till 2:30 this afternoon. Thank you and the rest of the staff for keeping things moving forward. This guy is not just a gift to the church, but he's a gift to me personally. I told him numerous times that I felt more rested going away this year than any other year because I knew you were at the helm and moving things forward and holding down the fort. So thank you, and thank Trey and Danielle wherever she is, and Miranda and all the boys in the back. Thank you to Daniel and to Tyler. We've got a great staff, and it helps us. We need to get away. I didn't realize how much we needed to get away until we were actually away. But to know that we have an omnicompetent staff that is handling things while we're away helps us rest. So
many things to ask forgiveness for when you get back. I'm kidding, of course. So Tullian gets a detailed report of all the conversations I have, which is kind of how he stays in the loop. No forgiveness needed. No forgiveness. Only permissions up here. So I want to talk about that. I was in your role for a while. I got out of it for personal and specific reasons. But I know the wear and tear it has on pastors in this role. And the way that you deliver, honestly, I don't know how you do it, because gas is on the right. You threw the brake out the window a long time ago. And when he comes and he preaches here, he delivers a message. It's like everything. You leave everything on the field. And I know how exhausting that is. And at the same time, it's so articulate, so thoughtful, and week after week after week, it just has this effect. You have to get away to kind of refill the inkwell, right? The quill is dry, needs more ink in the inkwell. Tell us, where have you been? What have you been doing? How's it been?
Like I said, we did need the break. And I joke about this from time to time, but when people find out what I do for work, they say, well, is that all you do? I mean, that's like 30 minutes a week, you know?
You write a speech once a week.
And I always chuckle because I know that can be the assumption. But I was thinking about it last night. it really is kind of a 24/7 sort of calling. My wife and I are typically on the front lines for people that are in some sort of crisis, and it doesn't have to be some catastrophic crisis. It can just be something that's been weighing someone down. And so we meet people regularly at the bottom of things. And thank God he's given us the capacity to be able to shoulder that. Sometimes I don't know how. I mean, I feel at times like my tank is completely empty, and yet I still have something to give, and that's just God sort of, doing what God does through broken vessels like me. But yeah, we love what we do. I love what I do. I wouldn't. There are much easier ways and better ways if I was interested in making more money or having an easier, calmer life. There are different things that I could do, but I don't want to. I don't want to. I mean, this is what I feel very much called to do. I told Stacy last night, we were talking about some of the things that not just people in the room, but people around the country and around the world are going through, and they reach out to us for whatever reason. We're very wide open about our own stories and our own need for grace, and so people feel safe coming to us and telling us their, secrets and their struggles, and we were talking about some of that. And I've been doing this for 25 years. This poor girl has been doing it for 6. And so I said, we've been married for 9 years, August 26th. So this coming up, August, whatever, that's 23 days from now. We'll have been married for 9 years.
Happy anniversary.
And I told her, I looked at her last night and I said, in every imaginable way, relationally, professionally, psychologically, emotionally, I have completely complicated your life. By marrying me, your life got so much more complicated. And of course, she brushes that off and is a joyful partner to me. But yeah, we're thrilled to be back, thrilled to have been away. We spent 11 days in Marco Island, which is on the southwest coast of Florida. That has been sort of my summer home away from home since the 80s. My parents used to take us there when we were kids. I was telling Stacy on Friday that Marco Island equals rest to me in my mind. That's the association that I have. It's just unplug, rest. We don't do much. We sleep, we eat, we sit on the beach, we watch movies, we take walks, we read sometimes. I spent an inordinate amount of time watching Wimbledon because I'm a big tennis fan.
That's right. You texted me and said, hey, I'm not coming to hear you preach.
Right. I was back in town the Sunday you were here, and I said, but I won't be there. The men's final, Wimbledon final is on.
So
I'm not watching church. I
you.
come downstairs. The final was starting at 10:30 or something, and I come downstairs, and Stacy's got The Sanctuary on. I was like, shut that off, man. I mean, shut it off. We got bigger, more important things to be watching this morning than The Sanctuary.
Super grateful for you.
Yeah,
Super
no, you're welcome.
So
you're
awesome.
welcome. We actually had, thanks to my wife, we had Wimbledon on the television and you on her iPad. I wasn't watching the iPad. She was. I was watching Wimbledon. But it was all happening in the same room. And then we got back. And Stacy, we were home for a week, and Stacy left to go to Texas. She just got back on Thursday. She was gone for 11 days, and she got to see both her boys and spend time with her boys and her family, her parents. So I was super grateful that she was able to do that. And I've just been stirring up trouble online for 2 weeks. That's what happens when my wife goes out of town.
I heard.
My wife goes out of town. I've got no work to do. I'm like, I'm bored. What can I do?
That's right.
Maybe I can piss off some religious people.
Let's go
That's
throw
always,
some rocks.
that's always fun.
We threw some rocks through sacred windows,
Gosh.
I think.
But you and I got to do the live stream.
Yeah, that was fun.
A couple last week
talk
or the
about
week before.
poking the bear.
Yeah, so it was. It
got
feels
really awkwardly quiet in here all of a sudden. Did you hear that?
It's been a great time off. I was chastised mildly by my wife when she got home because she was really counting on me resting. No, this isn't your fault. This is me stirring up, She's very, very protective of me and wants me to rest when it's time to rest because she knows how much I need it. And but things happen around the world, and things happen that people talk about, and I feel obligated to weigh in.
We're going to do lives about once a month from now on.
Yeah, we are.
I'll introduce that to you on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And the next one is the Prince of Darkness and Jesus. We're going to talk about Ozzy
Rest
Osbourne.
in peace, Ozzy Osbourne. That was so. There's a. For those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, there was a...
who here doesn't know who Ozzy Osbourne is?
No, now Ozzy they do. I know they know Ozzy. They should, if you want to go to heaven. But there was a very famous, well-known preacher in Southern California who died. And it was no secret over the last 15, 20 years that he and I differed sharply on some what I consider to be essential things. And so after his death, a lot of people were sort of weighing in and talking about it. I mean, his impact is felt far and wide. And so I wrote a couple of respectful but critical pieces, not of the man, but of the message that I believe has done a lot of damage to a lot of people that reach out to me. Very much a do more, try harder, get better, prove that you're really a Christian by how you live kind of messaging, which is the opposite of what we talk about around here. It is finished are the words that define Christianity, not just do it. And so, of course, people came at me pretty hard. There was a lot of support, but people came at me pretty hard. But then, as God would have it, 3 days later, Ozzy Osbourne dies. And I was shocked. I've only cried twice when a celebrity has died. Philip Seymour Hoffman, the actor who had been sober for 12 to 15 years, most brilliant actor of our generation, in my opinion, my generation. And he had been in recovery for 12 to 15 years, been sober, relapsed, and within 2 weeks was dead. And when I got that news back in 2011 or 2012, whenever it was, I mean, I remember where I was sitting and I got the news and started crying immediately. The second time was when Ozzy died. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. I can hardly remember a moment in my life where I didn't know who he was, and he really scared me at first. I was introduced to him when I was in 4th grade, and he just seemed so evil to me, you know? And then, you know, as the years go on and you grow up and you get to see more of their lives, and I've probably watched every documentary there is on Ozzy Osbourne.
Have you seen Ozzy and Jack's Adventures?
No, but yes, I have, but not in passing.
I was introduced to that.
So anyway, he died, and I wrote a very short, but like, miss you, Ozzy, you know. And the back-to-back between me saying something kind about Ozzy after I had said something critical about this preacher, my God, man. I mean, my rest at that point, my vacation at that point was officially over. But yet, I think it was revealing. It was very strategic. I think it showed people the difference between good news and good advice, between it is finished and just do it. And so I always feel like it is a part of my calling to, in some way, reflect what Jesus did in the Sermon on the Mount, where he was saying some counterintuitive things, and he would always preface it by saying, "You've heard it said, but I tell you. You've heard it said, but I tell you." And he was really contrasting religion with a relationship to God. And so when I have the opportunity to do that, I don't do it all the time, although the message that we deliver here myopically does do that in one sense, but I don't explicitly contrast those two things all the time. But when I have the opportunity and I think it's helpful and beneficial for people to see the contrast, I make it. And so, you know, like I said, as God would have it, he gave me an opportunity to make that contrast. I wasn't looking for the opportunity to make that contrast, but the contrast was made nevertheless, and it stirred up good discussion. I mean, these posts went viral. It was unbelievable.
It was awesome. I text Tullian and say, one word, more.
I know. I said, you are part encourager, part antagonizer, instigator,
You know that friend,
which I love.
Friend,
of course.
The friend you had in high school, you call him up and say, hey, you want to go vandalize something?
Yeah.
It's basically,
That's right.
and it's moralism we're vandalizing, right?
So, yes, vandalizing moralism.
You can have
Whew,
that.
I'll take it. That's a great.
Well, thanks for sharing, Stacy. How was your vacation?
I always love it when she goes back to Texas because it does fill her heart. She gets to see people that she loves, that she misses. She doesn't know this, but as we were falling asleep last night, I was praying meticulously and very much in detail for my daughter Jenna, who comes home tomorrow, after being away for 3 months in Switzerland. And I was just thanking God for what he's been doing in her life while she's there and asking God to give her a safe trip home. And on the heels of that prayer, I was thanking God for Stacy, because to be here, to be married to me, and to be here doing this is a huge personal sacrifice to her. Everybody she knows, everybody she grew up with, her mom, her dad, her 2 boys, her cousins, siblings, all of them live in Texas. She's the only one that lives outside of Texas. And so I know it is no small thing for her to be by my side here in Jupiter with me. I couldn't do it without her. Absolutely couldn't do it without her. I know it's a sacrifice. So I always love it when she gets to go away and sort of get her heart filled by the people who love her.
Yeehaw. Welcome back. Glad to have you. All right, part of my job is to keep us on track.
Yes, please. Yes,
gave
keep
me
me
that
on track.
responsibility.
That is your job, for sure.
Miranda, stop. All right. So we're going to flip things a little bit. Thank you for sharing that. Sincerely glad you're back. You know that's true. We want to, rather than talk about what was said in the last series, we want to point forward to the next series, raise some curiosity as to what we're going to do. So when you come back from these vacations, and when you come back after a series, typically there's some reflection that takes place. We want to talk about the next series, because you kind of do a message to the church, who we are, our ethos as a sanctuary. And you're going to do a 2 to 3 part series coming up starting next Sunday. And we're going to hone in on some things that are pretty specific about us. One word: recovery. What that means. Tullian had one assignment. Think about that. And he has. And we've dialogued about some of those things. Now, I've noticed, Tullian, that when you talk about recovery, this is a recovery program masquerading as a church, a lot of people in this room look around, their head starts moving around, they're looking for the addicts, the alcoholics, people who are tattooed, tatted up. And what we want to do is to stop the head moving around, right, and have them focusing on Christ, because recovery, sobriety, all those words really isn't about that. Those people may need that in a more acute way, but that language is important to us because it gets to the roots of some of the things that we think about Christ's power, the gospel's power in our life, grace, power, and you're going to explain what it means on very specific levels, so that when somebody's asked, where do you go to church? I go to the sanctuary. What is that? Oh, it's a recovery program masquerading as a church. And then there's the next question, what is that? Yeah. So we all want to be able to answer that very articulately for people so they understand what we're saying. So having said all that, what are you going to say?
Yeah, I won't know that until next Saturday night.
Awesome.
But kidding, I'm kidding. So twice a year, always, since this church started, August, usually 2 to 3 weeks in August when we come back from being away, and always the first 2 weeks in January to start the new calendar year, I do a 2 to 3 week series on who we are. What is this place? What are we about? Why do we say the things that we say? Why are we so focused and fixated on one particular thing? And so I do kind of a behind the scenes look at what makes us tick. It's not a series where I talk about various programs we do or various offerings we have. That's not what this is about. This is more like, hey, every Sunday I show up with baked goods. I want to take all of you into the kitchen and show you the ingredients. What is the method to our madness here? What makes this place, in my opinion, very unique? So unique that, to be honest with you, if the sanctuary didn't exist, and many of you have heard me say this, I've said this to you, but if the sanctuary didn't exist, I'm not sure I would go to church anywhere. And that's not because I don't believe in God or don't believe in my need to be around other people who believe in God. I just don't feel like I fit in church culture, in the sort of the subculture of modern Christianity. I don't fit. I'm not a rule keeper. I've never been able to color inside the lines, kind of wear my heart on my sleeve. And those environments are too safe and too sanitized for somebody like me. And I'm not trying to ruffle feathers on purpose. It's just how I came into this world. And so I always felt like I couldn't really be myself in that world. That I had to, not that I was consciously putting on masks, but looking back, I can now see that I almost had to put on masks in order to survive in that culture, specifically in certain situations. And so twice a year, I like to pause, take a deep breath, and say, let's take a field trip into the kitchen so that you can see all of the ingredients. I want you to know what makes this place tick. And some of you may like it and go, man, I resonate with that. And others may go, oh, now that I know that, okay, I'm out. Totally fine. No harm, no foul. We are not under the assumption that the sanctuary is for everybody. I know that. So I have said, and my wife and I have talked about this many, many, many times now for many years here. When I was in my former life, I was pastoring very much the way that I do now. I was preaching very much the same thing that I preach now. The message hasn't changed as a result of crashing and burning and falling flat on my face 10 years ago. The messenger has changed, but the message has stayed the same. It's just that the message is coming from a deeper place, I think, from a more felt place. And so in my former life, whenever I heard the word recovery, I just assumed, and I was all for it. I had people in my family that were addicts and in need of recovery, but I just always assumed that recovery was for people who had succumbed to some demon of addiction. Drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever, you name it, food, whatever. And that if that wasn't your problem, if you didn't have those conventional addictions, then you weren't a person in recovery. And then I crashed, and I burned, and I never had, thank God, because I don't know moderation, so thank God I didn't have any conventional addiction. I've never been a big drinker, smoked a lot of weed until I was about 21 years old. A lot. The fact that I have any brain cells left is a miracle. And did some other drugs, but that's not been a part of my life or world in a long time. But when I crashed and burned, I found myself connecting deeply to people in active recovery, people who were recovering from those sorts of addictions. And I realized I had a lot in common with them, even though we didn't share the same addictions. I had a lot in common with them in the sense that I too felt bottomed out, like I had burned bridges. I was living with guilt and shame and regret and a deep sense of loss. And that level of desperation connected me to other desperate people, many of whom I found in recovery places. And it's sort of a light bulb went off in my mind, and I thought, wait a minute. There are really only two kinds of people in this world. People in recovery who know that they are, and people in recovery who think that they're not. But there's nobody who's not recovering from something. If you're a human being, you are in recovery. It may not be from drugs or alcohol or sex or anything like that, but some sense of loss, rejection, trauma, feelings of guilt and shame for things said or done or left unsaid or undone. just a past that haunts you for a variety of different reasons. Maybe you're addicted to control. You're a helicopter mom because you're a control freak. You're a controlling dad because that's what makes you feel safe. I mean, I could just go. There's a laundry list of ways that I could list, or things that I could list that would demonstrate we are all recovering from something. I have a friend named Paul Zoll who has mentored me theologically and personally for a long, long time. 15, 16, 17 years, something like that. And a good friend. He's in his 70s now, and a dear friend, smartest person I've ever met in my life, and I've been around some smart people, but he is the quintessential theological psychologist. And what I mean by that is by vocation, he was a pastor for many, he's retired now, but he was a pastor and an author and a seminary president for many, many years. So he lived in the theological world. But he has such an acute understanding of the human condition, the why underneath the what, that he's spent almost his entire life digging down deep into that human condition and showing the connection between our need and God's provision for that need. That's the marrying of theology and psychology. My dad was a psychologist. He had a private practice in Fort Lauderdale for many, many, many years, and a live radio show that he did Monday through Friday. He mentored a lot of counselors and therapists and psychologists. So psychology's always been in my life. It's always been in my world. But Paul Zoll was the one who helped me connect the dots in ways I hadn't connected before. And so theological psychology, fancy phrase, is just a sort of a highbrow way of saying around here, we want to understand ourselves better. We want to understand the why underneath the what better. Why am I triggered by that? Why do I always gravitate toward this? Why, when I feel pressure or when I feel loss or when I feel some sense of fear, why do I always run to that? Or why do I respond this way all the time when this happens or someone says that? Or why do I kind of like these people and don't like those people? And I mean, we're talking about the human condition here. That's all we're talking about. And we are all human. We all have this condition. And to understand that condition so that our level of self-awareness is raised is, in my opinion, the sign of mental and emotional and spiritual health. And to be able to connect that level of awareness and desperation to God's provision in His grace and His mercy, in His forgiveness, in His unconditional love is what personally I'm all about, and organizationally what the sanctuary is all about. And so anyone who listens to me on a regular basis can see, even though I'm not explicit in talking about these categories necessarily, they can see that there's always this deep dive into the human struggle at some level beneath the surface stuff. Not just, I'm struggling because my husband doesn't spend enough time with me, or my kid doesn't listen to me, or my friend. Yes, but underneath that stuff, the way that stuff affects you, why it affects you in those ways, that's the stuff I'm interested in, the sort of the second layer stuff. And so if you pay any attention to the things that I say or write, you'll know that I do that, but I don't stop there. I then show the connection between our deep, dire need and to hopefully make you increasingly aware of that need by dissecting my heart on a weekly basis, which is what I do to prepare. I look at my own fears, I look at my own insecurities, I look at my own frustrations and struggles and secrets. I look at all that stuff as honestly as I can, and then I just go ahead and assume that what's true for me is true for you too, in different ways maybe. And then to connect that to the way God loves us and forgives us. And I think, psychology without theology leaves people with a good diagnosis and no cure. And theology without psychology tends to become dry, cold, cerebral. It's all about knowing more. In fact, in my experience, because theological circles are where I spent most of my time, theology by itself is a great place to hide from yourself. A great place to hide from yourself. You're always dissecting God and talking about God and reading and studying the Bible and dissecting the Bible. And that is a great way to avoid yourself. And so we don't let that happen around here. I'm not avoiding myself. I'm not going to let you avoid yourself. Ultimately, that's God's job. But I believe that that's the direction we're supposed to go. And then for people to see that at the end of that diagnosis, which can be haunting in some ways, when we finally face ourselves and we get honest, really brutally honest about ourselves, to give people hope and to show people forgiveness, grace, mercy awaits you, that regardless of what you've done or failed to do, or regardless of who you have failed to become, well, may the accuser roar of sins that I have done. I know them well and thousands more. My God, he knoweth none. That my sin is cast into the sea of God's forgotten memory. That is the hope that all of us have. And so I warn people, as does Stacy when she takes the women through Discover. She warns them on the front end and says, now listen, it's going to get harder before it gets easier. Because when you take a deep dive and start focusing on the under the surface stuff of your particular human struggle and your particular human condition, things get uncomfortable because you're now facing things about yourself and about your life and about your present and your past and fear of the future that you may have been avoiding without even realizing it. You may have been trying to numb in 1,000 different ways, through busyness, through relationships, through whatever. And so I always warn people, like, this is not an easy thing to do. It would be much easier for me to stand up here and read 3 Bible verses on a Sunday morning and just tell you what they mean.
Yeah, some would say that it's entirely reasonable, but extremely drastic.
Yes, right? Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's the only way forward. I mean, it really is. What was the title of your sermon? It was a great title. It was like the only way.
I don't remember.
The only way out is through. The only way out is through.
That's right.
Great title. And
is that all you saw of it?
No. I watched it. I watched it. I listened to every word.
Well,
I listened to every word.
While
I was watching the men's Wimbledon finals. I was like, would you turn that down, please? I had Wimbledon on mute, by the way.
You don't have to apologize.
Just for the record, my wife can testify. Wimbledon was on mute until you were done. Then it went back.
Well, we can analyze my insecurity about
this.
Does
that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it's the best teaser trailer you could have done.
Okay.
And that starts next week.
So that starts next week, and it will be 2 to 3 weeks. I haven't decided yet whether it will be 2
we'll
weeks
have
or 3 weeks.
tissues in the foyer and therapist on call.
But it really will be, again, let me emphasize that, whether you're tracking with what I'm saying right now or not, and I assume that most of you are, but even if you're not, I still highly recommend that you show up for the next 2 to 3 weeks because really, like I said, this is an invitation into the kitchen. If there's something about this place that you don't like, well, come with me into the kitchen and figure out what that is so that when you leave, you'll know why you're leaving, okay? But you may discover something in the kitchen that turns a light bulb on for you like it did for me many years ago, like I described in the aftermath of my crash and burn. And people don't become less healthy when they understand themselves better. Self-awareness, like I said, increased self-awareness is always a measure of mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Always. Even if it's difficult, painful, it's always a measure of mental. And and the end result of that excursion is freedom.
That's right.
Freedom.
That's right. All right, can I borrow 5 minutes from the audience? Extra 5? Okay, I'm going to anyway. So let's ask this question. What if you dropped Tullian Tchividjian into Chat GPT? I'm going to read this and have you respond to it. You ready?
Go.
You good?
Go, yeah.
All right. Tullian's reach today is narrower but deeper, less institutional, more relational and raw. While no longer a fixture of mainstream evangelicalism, thank God, he maintains a loyal, growing audience among the bruised, broken, and burned out who are hungry for grace that meets them at rock bottom. Tullian is deeply loved by the broken and sharply criticized by the religiously careful. His message is beautiful to some and dangerous to others. But whether or not people like him or not, they rarely feel neutral. The kind... How about that?
That is true.
Yeah. AI is taking over the world. The kinds of people who flock to Jesus, the broken, the outcasts, sinners, those weighed down by shame and religious legalism, tend to resonate deeply with Tullian. He preaches grace for the worst of us, honesty about failure, and a gospel that meets us where they are, not where they should be. On the other hand, the kinds of people who opposed or rejected Jesus, the religious elites, legalists, moralizers, and those invested in maintaining religious cleanliness or status, often find Tullian's message threatening or unacceptable. They tend to dislike him because he exposes the hypocrisy and moralism that they cling to, and because his story and message challenge their ideas about who's qualified.
Jeez.
So
with ChatGPT, why do I even need to exist? You know, I mean, that's...
well, there are reasons you need to exist, especially in my role. So, what's your response to that? Who are you, and where are you, and what's wrong with you, man?
I am, first of all, wow. I mean, I think that is right. I think that is an accurate description. You know, that's an accurate description of the way people respond to what I say. Here's something that always makes me uncomfortable with stuff like that. It does make it sound like this is my message. It's not. This is not. In fact, if you grew up in or around church culture, what I say on a weekly basis may sound new and novel to you, but it's not because it's new and novel. It's just so old and has been lost for so long that it only seems new and novel. So I am standing on the shoulders of many people who have gone before me. What I'm saying is not, it may seem and sound unique in our current age, but it didn't always sound this unique. I mean, when Martin Luther, I have 1517 tattooed on my left knuckles. That was the year that Martin Luther, my historical hero, nailed 95 challenges to the church door in a German village called Wittenberg. And the reason he nailed it to the church door was because the church door was like the town bulletin board. Kind of like what you might see if you go to your mailbox these days. If you live, you know, it's like everybody posts their notes about different things going on or online. It was like that. And all he wanted to do was generate a discussion. He had been a Roman Catholic monk and a Roman Catholic priest, and he was reading the Bible, and he was realizing that there was a disconnect between what the church was saying and what God himself was saying. And so he identified 95 of those things just to stir up discussion. Well, it stirred up a lot more than discussion. I mean, it launched a revolution because people had been suppressed for so long by the religious elite, been suppressed for so long believing that they were less than, that they needed the religious elite in order to access God. And Martin Luther was saying, no, Christianity is not a ladder that we climb to God. It's all focused on a cross where God came down to us. He meets us at rock bottom. Well, that launched a revolution. And since that time, and prior to that time too, but I don't want to do a detailed history lesson, but since that time, there have been people who have echoed those same sentiments. Now, sadly, as the church becomes increasingly institutional and as the church becomes increasingly moralistic, as the messaging becomes increasingly more about what we do rather than what God has done, who we need to become if we want to ensure that God likes us and stays happy with us and blesses us and all that stuff. What I'm saying here starts to sound very unique, very new and novel, but it's not because it's my message. It's not. This is the message delivered to us by God himself on an old rugged cross 2,000 years ago, and talked about prior to that by Old Testament prophets. So this is not new. It just seems new. I do believe, and Stacy was the one who helped me see this, because before we met, she had listened to my sermons and read my books, and she said, you know, your ministry has always been, the books I read and the sermons I heard were always sympathetic toward the sinner and the struggler and the secret keeper. But now, as a result of hitting rock bottom, crashing, burning, losing big, you have an empathy about you that it's not manufactured empathy. I don't think empathy can happen by reading a book or wanting to become more empathetic. It happens in the crucible of ache. It's developed at rock bottom. It's developed when you're desperate. And so if you want to make a distinction between sympathy and empathy, sympathy is me sitting down with someone, listening to them share their struggle and go, man, I hear what you're saying. Empathy takes it a step further and says, man, I feel what you're feeling because I've been there.
Right.
I know what the gutter smells like. I know what it feels like to lose. I know what it feels like to not be able to sleep because of guilt and shame and regret. I know what it feels like to feel hopeless. I know that. That's not just theoretical to me. That is real. And so I'm not going to hide that stuff. And there are some people that can't handle that, and that's okay. There was a time in my life where I couldn't handle that, obviously. But for those who are broken, for those who, we're all broken, but for those who are increasingly aware of their brokenness, for those who are becoming increasingly aware of some sense of hopelessness in this life, in your life, they are typically drawn to this because the entire focus is on God and what he's done for us, his love for us, his approval of us, his acceptance of us. So I like to define Christianity in 2 words. For you, period. It's 2 words. For you. It's not about you. It's for you. It's something done on the outside of you, for you. You get the benefits of everything God warred to secure for you. And that's why the gospel is called good news.
Glad you're back.
Good to be back.
Glad you're back, T.